everybody. I've been getting a lot of comments from clients and on my social media recently about intermittent fasting. And a lot of you will know that this is a really popular eating pattern. I won't call it a diet. You'll see a lot of celebrities advocate for it. You'll see it pop up in a lot of diet books. You'll see it appear in a lot of health and fitness magazines. And as is always the case when a diet becomes, or eating pattern becomes popular, the proliferation of the information is inevitably not going to be in the most scientific manner. And proponents of intermittent fasting make all sorts of claims about its value. They talk about things like cellular autophagy. They talk about things like improved mental clarity and focus, things like anti-aging. I'm going to put those aside for the moment, and I want to discuss what we actually know from the research of intermittent fasting and its efficacy as a tool for weight loss. Intermittent fasting protocols generally fall under two different types or two different subgroups. The first is time-restricted eating, and the other is intermittent energy restriction. Now, with time-restricted eating, it's often referred to as the 16-8 protocol. And this is when a subject or an individual will have a certain eating window with which to consume all of their daily calories. So, for example, in the 16-8 protocol, an individual will fast for 16 hours and then have an eating window of 8 hours. Now, that fasting window can include your sleeping time as well. So, for example, if you finish eating at 10 p.m. one evening, you fast until 2 p.m. the following day, and then you can eat from 2 p.m. to 10 p.m. That's your 8-hour window. With intermittent energy restriction, the most popular form is known as the 5-2 diet. So this is where different days prescribe various different calorie intakes. So in the 5-2 diet, you can eat what they call normal calorie consumption, usual calorie consumption, for 5 days of the week. And then for the other 2 days, you will fast with a much lower calorie intake, normally about 500 calories or about 20 to 30% of your usual calories. There's also a protocol known as alternative day fasting, which is similar to 5-2, but the frequency of the fasting day is bumped up to every other day. And then there's also the 24-hour fast, which also is similar to 5-2, except on those 2 fasting days, you consume 0 calories. It's really important to note at this point that there is a little bit of a problem in the scientific literature at the moment with regards to these different protocols, in that there doesn't seem to be an accepted standardization of the different methods of fasting. So, for example, there are studies done on the 5-2 method, and advocates of intermittent fasting as a useful tool will take those benefits and claim them for the 16-8 method, for example. And there really is no guarantee that any advantages seen in the 5-2 method will necessarily be seen in one of the other methods of intermittent fasting. So, why use an intermittent fasting eating protocol? Well, from my personal experience with clients and also from reading the literature, there seem to be 2 main benefits that are seen with intermittent fasting diets when compared to your standard continuous energy restriction diet. The first is to do with adherence and ease in following the protocol, and the second surrounds a couple of physiological benefits that seem to be enhanced with intermittent fasting over and above and beyond a standard energy restriction diet. Adherence and ease, when considering any type of diet or eating protocol, is in some ways really the essential factor in whether or not you achieve success with that eating protocol. there is evidence that intermittent fasting diets are easier to follow than standard continuous energy restriction diets. And as a consequence of this, those following them will experience higher levels of adherence and therefore higher levels of success. One study done, for example, on the 5-2 protocol noted that the fact that subjects didn't have to count calories every day sort of offered them a willpower break. So on the days when they did have to monitor their calories, they were sort of fresh and able to do it with more ease. The other concern with intermittent fasting that is often expressed to me is, will I be hungry? And this is perfectly reasonable and perfectly logical. I mean, if we're used to eating 3 or maybe 4 times a day, suddenly cutting it down to a smaller window, maybe you're only eating 2 times a day, it's a logical concern that you're going to be hungry. However, the science doesn't tend to back this up. The study I just noted further concluded that subjects displayed high levels of satiety throughout the study duration and displayed no compensatory eating on the non-restricted days. So the day after a fast, one might logically think that someone would overeat to compensate for the previous day's fast. But this doesn't seem to be what the literature is saying is happening. And in fact, a further review noticed even greater benefit than this, observing an important carryover effect of reduced consumption by about 20% on non-restricted eating days. So as opposed to eating more on your non-restricted days, the subjects tended to eat even less than they ordinarily would have. It's really important to note at this point that these benefits have not been seen universally through all studies. In fact, this study noted that the majority of participants rated the fasting days as making daily activities more difficult. And in fact, in that study, 70% of the participants claimed that this diet was actually more difficult to follow than any previous standard energy restriction diets that they had tried to follow. The physiological benefits of intermittent fasting diets tend to focus around reduced insulin levels and the consequent increase in lipolysis. One study, for example, revealed that fasting was better at promoting consistent insulin levels and preventing hyperinsulinemia than both a standard continuous energy restriction diet and, interestingly, a low carbohydrate diet. Now, these findings reiterated an earlier study that found fasting, or intermittent fasting, was more effective at improving insulin sensitivity than continuous energy restriction diets. So what's the take home from all of this? Well, it's really important to note that intermittent fasting isn't some magic bullet that can cure anyone's weight management issues. As with any diet or eating protocol, the calories in versus calories out equation still holds true. So if you consume more calories than you expend, you will put on weight, and vice versa. This, of course, makes logical sense and is reiterated in the scientific literature. 3 recent reviews in 2017, 18, and 19 showed that intermittent fasting diets do not seem to elicit greater weight loss than standard calorie energy restriction diets when they're properly adhered to. So clearly there is a general consensus that both intermittent fasting and energy restriction diets can elicit a comparable effect in promoting weight loss. So why would you try intermittent fasting? Well, if you're someone who has not had success with continuous energy restriction diets, this might be a good opportunity to try something different. You might find the physiological benefits of insulin reduction and the adherence and ease benefits might really affect you positively. The other positive effect that I've seen clinically is clients who tend to have issues with constant energy levels seem to really be positively affected by trying some sort of intermittent fasting diet. On a personal note, I use intermittent fasting and have been for some years. I simply find it's just the easiest diet to follow. It's uncomplicated, it doesn't cost any money, and it actually is one of the few diets that needs less care and preparation. I simply wake up in the morning, I drink water, I drink black coffee, and I get on with my day. I also exercise fasted, and I really notice no difference in strength or endurance, whether or not I've eaten or whether or not I've fasted. So I have personal experience that suggests it can be useful. I have some anecdotal evidence from clients that it can be useful and beneficial, and the scientific evidence says that it can be useful and it's also safe. So if you're interested in this diet protocol, I'd say give it a go for sure. Thanks for listening, and feed the life you want to lead. Bye.